Hello, my name is Robbins, and my opportunities here today to tell you all some of the things that are going on relative to climate change that hopefully you can take home and put into action. I am very fortunate that we are surrounded by all these brilliant people who can think globally, so I can act locally, and so can you. All right, and I'm not one of those really brilliant people, so right off the bat, I'm going to have to figure out how to work the slides. So what was it that Obi said? Get past that one. I'm going to come in under 17 minutes if I can. Did Obi say it was going to rain less and then sometimes it was going to rain more? Is that what the message was? And so how do we prepare for that? We're fortunate in that one of the solutions to both of those situations is storage. If it rains a lot or when it rains a lot, if you can capture those fresh waters and store them for times when it isn't raining so much, you've accomplished quite a bit. Natural systems, fortunately, are very good at doing that, very good at capturing and storing fresh water. South Florida used to have lots of natural systems that were just that, very good at storing waters. Since then, we haven't had that same amount of storage. We've had a lot of drainage in the South Florida system. Lake Okeechobee, for example, actually stores about half the volume of water that it naturally stored even before there was a dike around the lake. And certainly the remaining freshwater systems around South Florida have certainly been drained to a great extent. And so we have a mission ahead of us to try and capture some of that freshwater storage, and we can do that in natural systems. And in Palm Beach County, we were very fortunate that we matured into a preservation-minded community at a time when dock stamps were available to fund things like Florida Forever and Florida Communities Trust. And as a result, we were able to purchase a lot of natural lands in Palm Beach County and set out to try and restore some of the hydrology of those natural lands so that we can capture some rainfall and create that storage. When we first started purchasing some of these lands, let's see if there was, somebody said a red button. There we go. A lot of the lands had old dilapidated control structures where there was no capturing of freshwater rains. Went out quickly to tide, was lost to the system. It isn't rocket science to take those natural lands, build up a berm around those lands, rehabilitate the water control structures, where you can maintain a water level that's beneficial for the natural systems, but you also have some boards or gates that you can install to raise water levels up when you want to capture some of those floodwaters. And an example of where this came in handy was in Tropical Storm Isaac. Some areas of Palm Beach County got 18 inches of rain in about 36 hours of time. That's a lot of water. But we were able to use thousands of acres of natural land to store water several feet deep, capturing many thousands acre-feet of water. And after the storm, we tried to go back, and I won't go through all of the numbers, but those areas were very beneficial for storing floodwaters that otherwise would have impacted neighborhoods. This is one of those structures in place. Actually, the structure is there, you can't see it because the boards are stacked up to the top of the riser. The riser's under there, it's under about a foot of water. And so this particular natural area is storing water about 4 feet above its normal high water stage. It's a couple thousand acres in size, storing water 4 feet higher than it normally would for some period of time. That's water that didn't go into a residential subdivision, was held in the natural area for slower release after the storm. So for months after the storm, we were releasing this water to benefit some of the downstream areas and to benefit some residential areas. The residential area that's to the left didn't flood because dock stamps were available 10 years ago. That's a take-home message. That's something that isn't happening today. As we go through, we're also trying to monitor some of the benefits of what we're doing. I told you I'm not a rocket scientist. There we go. And this is priority number 1 in the recommendations of the RCAP under natural systems. Try and monitor what's going on already now. It would be embarrassing to not know what's already in front of your face. So in this particular example, What's being monitored is water levels in one of those natural systems. And so the green line is ground level. You see actual water levels monitored by our staff. And red is a trend line over time. This is a 7-year graph. So a 7-year trend of this one particular natural area goes from 0 storage to several feet of storage is what we're trending to. That's just one small natural area that we're monitoring over time. But we really need to be doing a lot more of that kind of monitoring to figure out what's going on in these systems. Another example that I want to use, and this one is a little more closely related to rocket science. It's hard to create these storage and natural systems that are in urban settings. This is a 1 square mile that's set a lot of residential, light industrial neighborhoods around it. The drainage systems in place for those subdivisions are set such that they're designed to get water to run off as quickly as they can. The floors and the finished pads are set at elevations such that you can't raise the water level in those areas. In this particular example, we came up with a system that's a little closer to rocket science. We were actually able to come up with a plan to make this an island of fresh water. Raise the water level in the 1 square mile of land that we owned, stack water up, and not affect the surrounding areas that are held at a lower elevation. So this was pretty cool. This was a great idea, and it actually worked out pretty well. This is under construction. You can see that a lot of areas are being excavated. There's berms being built up to be able to hold water higher. We're able to do this because of Farm Bill money. The opportunity to take areas, this was formerly pasture, was kept drained, kept dry. Some Farm Bill money was available to purchase it, restore it, get that storage back into the system. It worked great. It worked so great that Agricultural Secretary Vilsack, when he came to South Florida last year to announce $10 million to accelerate Northern Everglades restoration, he chose this site that was restored with Farm Bill money to make that announcement and that presentation. That's fantastic. We were all patting ourselves on the back that we had done such a good job. And this is what the backdrop was when he came and spoke. From the slides previous, this was what it looked like when he spoke. The irony here is that just a couple of years after this project was funded, before construction even ended, there were a couple of critical words eliminated from Farm Bill, the words local government. Local governments are no longer eligible to even get this kind of funding. 2 simple words by an executive order. We've been working for years to try and get those 2 simple words put back in so we can do more of this kind of work. We met with our congressional delegation just 2 weeks ago trying to get those 2 words put back in. That's another take-home message here of those 2 words that we're trying to get. Not everything goes like it's according to plan. Every once in a while, things don't go the way we hope. One of the things that you will encounter if you become an advocate to try and get funding for local governments is a perception that money spent on local governments doesn't provide jobs. And of course, that's been the mantra for the last several years. Of any grant dollars that are out there, you got to provide jobs. It just isn't true. Local governments who get these dollars do create jobs. Matter of fact, local governments are very good at creating jobs for local companies. Minority and women-owned business are funded by local government activities. So that's something that if you're going to become an advocate, you're going to hear about once in a while. Rainfall is not the only thing that's predicted to change both spatially and temporally. Critters, wildlife, listed species are probably going to be impacted both spatially and temporally. So one of the things we're also looking at, working within the context of the compact, is some of the critical species, say in the Florida Keys, that live in these tropical hammocks, or marsh rabbits, or key deers. As climate change, will we need to find new homes for them? Will a natural area in Palm Beach County be dedicated or designed to be a recipient area for some of these species if their own habitats are being affected by climate change? In addition, I like sea turtles. I have my sea turtle tie, so that's an example I can use as an animal that is being spatially and temporally impacted right now. Most of the folks in this group probably have seen sea turtles laying eggs on the beach at night. If you haven't, I encourage you to do so. It is an amazingly impressive sight. And we all know that happens in the summertime. That's when turtles come ashore. That's less true now. We actually, surprisingly, have every month of the year, we have turtles coming up to nest on beaches in Palm Beach County. And it's not just in Palm Beach County. They're starting to range a little further north, too. The other thing that we're seeing is, being reptiles, the gender of the hatchlings is determined by the temperature of the nest. The warmer the nest, generally the turtles come out are females. Cooler nests are males. What we're starting to see is the more southerly nests have a higher propensity for female hatchlings coming out of those nests. So this is one listed species that already we can see a change in the way that they are distributing themselves as a result of climate change. And so that's something that we also need to be thinking about. Others will be able to speak more strongly than I can about beach erosion and what's going on our beaches as a result of climate change. But there's an effect to something like turtles in this particular slide. We can see some of the nest markers. Turtles are okay on a narrow beach. Historically, Southeast Florida beaches were narrow. They don't mind narrow beaches. What they have a trouble with, though, is when there's a hard structure back behind that beach. And in this particular slide, I don't know how well it comes through, this turtle came up, encountered the revetment a few yards down, encountered it again, a few yards down, encountered it again, and then eventually went back out to sea and gave up on the stretch of beach. As we see more erosion going on in the counties where turtle nesting density is high, in Palm Beach County we have density as high as 1,000 nests per mile. We're going to start seeing more seawalls in those areas as we see acceleration and erosion going on. And as we see those hardened structures go in, it's going to be a little harder for turtles to make a living in Palm Beach County. So we need to be thinking about, are there areas that will be able to adapt with rising seas? So if the seas rise, if the dunes move landward, do those areas need to be identified and preserved now so there are areas for nesting in the future? Maybe those areas aren't even in Palm Beach County, because if it's going to get warmer like we're hearing, more of those turtles are going to be nesting. I think, wasn't there somebody from Volusia County over here? Volusia County may have 1,000 nests per mile a few years down the road. We need to be thinking about things like that. And of course, it's not just turtles. There's other high priority species like coral reefs that we need to be doing some thinking about and planning for. Certainly coral reefs are susceptible to many aspects of climate change. It's not just warming, there's other components of water chemistry in there as well. There certainly is a big reef tract down in the Keys that extends all the way up through Palm Beach County. Perhaps we're going to see a migration of corals up that way. Corals can't go too much higher than Palm Beach County, because beyond Palm Beach County the Gulf Stream veers offshore. We don't have that clear water coming so close to shore. One of the points I want to make here is it isn't just local governments responding to the concern of corals. As a matter of fact, a lot of private organizations are heavily invested into these analyses as well. The Nature Conservancy is one that I can think of that is doing a lot of planning for coral resiliency, a lot of studying and monitoring going on. So when you think about where you can help, it isn't just local governments. There's other private organizations that are doing quite a bit as well. Moving inside the inlets now, more towards the estuaries. We saw a slide just a few minutes ago that we'll see seawalls probably being elevated. There's another component called living shorelines. We need to be thinking about in the estuary as water levels go up, as things warm. What's going to happen to mangroves and seagrass as the primary producers in an estuary? Well, through a program that we call Living Shorelines, it is possible, as the seawalls go in, to put some plants in front of those walls to try and capture some of that habitat so it's not lost. The key component that we really need here is regulatory reform. A lot of the folks who live on the landward property owners in these estuaries, they don't want mangroves and seagrasses in their backyard. going to lose their view. It may attract listed species, and who knows what's going to happen. You know, if there's a listed species nesting off your backyard, how is it going to limit your property in the future? So those are some changes we really need at the state and federal level, but we need to convince local governments, city governments, that living shorelines is a benefit within their city, that we can do that. We do that now. We go to door to door to city governments to look for opportunities to do living shoreline restoration projects. I heard there was somebody here from the city of Lake Worth, I believe. City of Lake Worth has been fantastic about promoting living shorelines within their city. West Palm Beach we recently did a very large controversial living shorelines project there. We had to reach out to all of the neighborhoods, the civic associations, and once we got the civic associations on board, then we had the votes necessary at the city council level to do projects. Town of Palm Beach done projects on their own for living shorelines. They have been remarkably acceptive of that kind of restoration. Real quickly, agriculture is somewhat similar to natural systems, both going to be dependent on changes in rainfall patterns, both going to be dependent on freshwater storage. For example, this is a productive agricultural area in southerly Miami-Dade County that is forecast to have a lot of changes regarding sea level rise and freshwater availability. And so we need to be thinking in Palm Beach County, can those same agricultural operations migrate to Palm Beach County? And lastly, I also want to send, this is my last take-home message, that climate change isn't something we just go ask elected officials to do. It's something that should be pervasive throughout everything that we do, including for my own department where I work. We need to be thinking about climate change and all the things that we do on a daily basis. Climate change should just be part of those decision-making processes. And it could have a significant change in the way that we approach the restoration that we do. And this particular example is the Loxahatchee River in northern Palm Beach County. It was the state's first and one of only 2 federally designated wild and scenic rivers. One of the values of this river is that in 1940, it had a lot of cypress going up the river, and as you got closer to the inlet, there was more mangroves. By 1995, mangroves had worked their way largely up the river. There wasn't enough freshwater base flow coming down the river. There was no storage upstream of the river. That storage had been lost. So that's one of the things we've been working on for years, is how to increase that storage to keep this river as a freshwater riverine system. So it's even changing the way that we do our restoration opportunities, as it should change just about everything that local governments do. It isn't something more to do, it's just an additional consideration of what we're already doing.